Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is the founder of Angel Goddesses Healing and author of the book, children's book, No More Monster Under the Bed, that's shining your light on the dark. No other than Miss Shannon Curtis.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Shannon. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yes, my name is Shannon Curtis, and I am an author, like you said, of No More Monsters Under the Bed. I am an intuitive life coach that I help people with that throughout their life, and also people that are doing plant medicine. I work with them before and after. And then I'm also the founder of Angel Goddess Healing, which is just a sanctuary for healing where people can come in all walks of life and meet them where they're at.
Miss Shannon Curtis, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering children's books like this to come. So tell us, the title uses a universal childhood fear. How do you define the monsters that adults face, and how are they different yet similar to ones we feared as a children?
Yeah, I find that they're ultimately the same. They all come back to whatever we're fear of, maybe a trauma growing up. Maybe it is someone that sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental parents fighting, something that maybe scared us as a child. And we just really didn't understand it and was a little afraid to look at that monster under the bed. And so that's where the title and Shining Your Light on the Dark is all about, looking at those places with your light. And so as an adult, I find that we do the same thing, just in a different, maybe a bigger scale, but we all have those things, those fears that we still aren't always willing to look at. And so this book is for all ages, anyone that's willing to look at that monster and to see that ultimately he's your greatest teacher.
The greater teacher indeed. And what's this action represent in practical terms? Is it about awareness, courage, vulnerability, or a specific practice?
I think it's about all of them that you said. I think it starts with having the courage to look under that, to acknowledge that there's something maybe that scared you, and then to look at it. And sometimes we need a little guidance. And in this book, she has an angel that helps her and comes to bring her a special flashlight to help her look at that monster under the bed. And so as they go on that journey, she starts to understand it and to see him again as her greatest teacher. But sometimes we just need that extra guidance and that courage to be able to look at that, and just to have the remembrance of we have the power within to heal ourselves when we look at our greatest fear.
The power within, for sure. Is it the dark you write about primarily internal? And how do we shine a light on it?
Yeah, a lot of times the darkness that we talk about can be internal, but what I found is it's not really darkness that belongs to us. A lot of times it comes from traumas and things that were done to us. And so we're kind of holding on to that pain, holding on to that darkness, and it just doesn't feel right. And so a lot of times it's about letting that go and finding that light within. And once you find that light within, it shines everywhere. And then before you know it, the darkness is gone.
When someone feels paralyzed by a monster, what is the very first smallest step they can take to begin to shine light on it?
Yeah, I think the first step is just being aware of it, of admitting that to someone, that maybe that you're just afraid to look at that, and then it's having the curiosity of why, because that's what I find is we kind of have to do the opposite in order for something to disappear. We literally have to look at it, and so sometimes just having that understanding, the only way it's going to go away is when we stop, and it's that monster, something that we think we're chasing, that's chasing us, and do we have the courage to stop and turn around and look at it and ask, why are you chasing me? And so sometimes just being curious can turn it around. And then that's when we ultimately find that we have the power because we were brave to turn around and face that darkness and ultimately just heal that and find it and bring it back to love.
Yes, people, we have our own individual power. Unleash them. How critical is the act of specifically identifying and naming our fear? How does moving from a vague feeling of dread to define monster change your relationship with it?
Yeah, I found that for me, facing my monster, mine was sexual trauma. And that's what this book was kind of born of my journey of healing, but it can appeal to all different kinds of traumas. But when I was really understanding it and see how it played out in my life and the things that I did and the behaviors that I did ultimately was stemming from that. And so once I was able to face that and move through that and find forgiveness for my perpetrator, and ultimately an understanding of that was actually done for me, that it was done for me to experience these and experience the power within of moving through that trauma and finding forgiveness and finding healing. And now I can go spread it and share it to others. But it's that power of knowing forgiveness is never about the person that did it. It's about me saying, I'm not going to hold on to that pain anymore. And it's about being like willing to let go of that pain and give it back to the person that gave it to you. But ultimately, the forgiveness is just about finding love. And it's really about just finding love for yourself.
Finding love for sure. And how critical is the act of specifically identifying, naming our fear? How does moving from a vague or something more different that we experience when we are in younger age?
Younger is hard because we don't understand. We don't have all these tools that we have as an adult. And so we don't have the understanding. So sometimes we take on things that bad things happen, or let's say our parents divorce, and we don't really understand that. So as a child, we may take on that it was our fault. We did something. If we were better, if we didn't make the bad grade. And so that's what happens is we have these little false stories because we don't know any different. And so we just take that on as our own pain. And so as we grow up and we have more tools, and we get more tools to work with in our healing, you can see that those things weren't really about us, they were about them. And so, again, that's that kind of stepping into your power and owning that it wasn't your fault. It was ultimately your parents that they went through that, but it's your job now to heal it and to understand it. And it can teach you to move through that. And so, if you go through things in your life and disappointments, that it's about the journey of within and not the journey without of other people. And so again, I always say bringing it back to love, where if we can find forgiveness and compassion for ourselves, we're going to be way more easy to do that and see that in others.
Miss Shannon, how can we replace judgment and panic with curiosity when facing up our personal monsters?
That's a great question. So that's what you said, curiosity. That's always what I think of not judging, coming up from a place of judging it, it's bad or good, of trying to understand why. Because I believe everything happens for a reason. We sign up for it. There's some reason why we experience it. So when you turn that into curiosity, that's where you can find that, and you can find the gratitude in it of thank you for showing me. And sometimes it's thank you for showing me who I choose not to be, but it gives us discernment. And so we can understand the good when we have the bad, and it can be a teacher and it can show us what we like and don't like. And so it's that understanding of being curious and not judging it as bad or good, of just feeling what it feels like and if it's something that you like or don't like. And then you can build off of that.
Miss Shannon, on tools and strategies, can you share one simple practical tool or exercise from the book for someone who takes up 3 a.m. with the monster in full roar?
I'm a big believer in gratitude. I try to do a gratitude list every day of finding three things I'm grateful for, and I send it to somebody. And what I find is it changes my perception of things, because one thing can happen, the exact same thing can happen to me, and the exact same thing can happen to you. And maybe we're driving and we get cut off, and you might get mad and be like, oh, I'm going to be late. And I might look at it as, oh, okay, this taught me to slow down. Maybe I'm not supposed to be there. Maybe I just missed an accident. Those are those things. So when you switch your brain into finding the good in everything, that's when, again, you can bring it back to gratitude and love. And so that's a really easy concept to get. And sometimes it can just be, I'm grateful for a roof over my head, or that I have air conditioning. And so what happens is it trains your brain. And then before you know it during the day, you're trying to find little things to put in your gratitude. And you just have all these things coming at you because you're switching the way you're looking at it. So sometimes it can just be as simple as shifting your perspective.
Perspective indeed. And how do we build a monster fighting support team? How can we learn to ask for help in shining a light on our darkness?
Yeah, I think it's that being vulnerable and that connection, that human connection. That's why I love coaching. That's why I didn't go back to school to do therapy for me, because I found that for coaching, I get to share my experiences. So through that, we can create a bond and a connection. And so I just feel like it's finding that safe space wherever that is, whatever that looks like. I always say there's many, many paths to it. I have one that I use, but other people use prayer, meditation, church. There's all kinds of things that you can do, but ultimately, it's about finding that safe space where you can go and just be vulnerable and process all that trauma, process that pain, but in a place that you feel very safe with.
Very safe indeed. And how does the act of sharing our story, whether through a journaling or with trusted friend, rob our monster of their power?
I think it takes the shame and guilt away. I went through 7 years of addiction in my life, and when I went to a treatment center, everything was done in group session. And the reason why was because there's something about saying it in front of other people that takes the shame away, because you think you're the only one. We always think we're the only ones that are struggling, the only ones with these bad thoughts. And so once you say it out loud, there's this thing that literally releases it. And then you get this confirmation that you're not the only one, you're not alone. And so, again, it forms that connection. And I truly believe if we just start connecting more instead of disconnecting and finding the things that separate us and find the things that bond us together, that's really what's going to start to help and make that change. And again, create that safe space for that healing.
How do our monster manifest physically in our bodies? And what are ways we can use breath work, movement, or grounding to shine the light from the inside out?
Yeah, I truly believe trauma gets stuck in your body. So, under my experience, I was sexually traumatized when I was 4. And throughout my life, I had all kinds of physical problems with miscarriages, infertility, surgeries, all kinds of things. And I never really identified it till now, until I went on my healing journey and I could see and I could understand how that trauma gets stuck in you. So, it's all energy. And so, it's just moving it, like you said, breath work. A lot of people work with the chakras. I love working with plant medicine because it helps remove those blocks that I can't see. And so, again, it's finding that way of just getting that out. Some people like the body work, yoga, working out. It's just some kind of healthy way of connecting that mind, body, and soul, and understanding they all are connected. And it's just energy that gets stagnant in our body and it just builds and builds. And so, we just have to kind of remove those blocks.
Miss Shannon, how do we shine light on monster born from past trauma or childhood experiences without being re-traumatized by them?
So a lot of clients I work with, we sit with that, and when we go through these retreats and letting all of that go, I always try to tell them my idea of healing is not necessarily bringing up all those traumatic memories and remembering everything. I feel like the way I learned how to heal was through love and pushing all of that out with love. And so when I bring it back to that, and again, ultimately have my power and my understanding and my truth, it just kind of takes care of it all. And it doesn't have to traumatize it. Healing doesn't have to be painful. And sometimes we think we have to have that suffering to have that growth. And what I found is healing can be gentle and it can be kind and it can be nurturing. And so sometimes people need that. Sometimes people need the hit over the head, and sometimes they just need that just gentle, safe space to go. And so I really try to meet people where they're at on their journey and find that we all are on our own and we're all doing it in our own time.
Very well said, Miss Shannon. And what are some of the most common monsters you see people facing today?
Unfortunately, the most common sexual trauma. And that's really a passion of mine, working with people, because I never truly understood how much it was woven into our society till I started working with clients, till I undiscovered mine, because for 40 years of my life, I forgot my trauma. I pushed it down. It was too painful. And so once I had this remembrance, and again through plant medicine, but I had a remembrance of the trauma, I was able to heal it. And so a lot of times that's probably the number one that I've come across, because it's not talked about as much. And that's the thing where that shame and guilt really kind of breeds, is because it's not being talked about. And especially with a lot of men, I come across a lot of men that have it and they don't really know how to work through it. And so we just again create that safe space. But unfortunately, that would be the number one that I see as sexual trauma.
Miss Shannon, as a founder and an author, what are your short term and long term goals?
I would say my short-term goals, or what I'm doing right now, is just spreading the message of what I can do. And that's what I've learned, is all I can do is be me and spread my message. And if that gives hope, then that made my pain worth it. And my long-term goals are just to continue this and to grow this. I have other books coming out after this. And so there's, in the book, the child goes through, and there's 7 spirit animals that come and help. And so each animal is going to have a book after that, and it's going to talk about all these uncomfortable topics that we don't really want to talk about, and how we work kids through anger, and how we work them through grief, and showing them a way. And then as adults, we can do that too. And so that's what I love about these books, is they're beautiful. And my tattoo artist actually drew all the drawings, and so it just really helps it come to life. And it takes these heavy subjects, but makes them in a way that children can understand, and adults, and teach them to walk through that, and that healing's possible. So that would just be my ultimate thing, is to continue that journey of shining my own light. And ultimately, that's all I can do, is just be me.
Just be you for sure. And good luck to your goals and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there
That I
having a dark one in their life?
Yeah, I would just say my prayers is to everyone, is so that they can find their light, and however that looks, and to be brave to shine their light on their darkness. Because ultimately, what I found is, what my biggest fear was, my own power, was stepping in my light and being my most authentic self. So that would be my ultimate hope for everybody, anyone listening, is just a glimpse of that, of just being curious of who are they, and who do they want to become, and to just continue on that journey.
Continuing the journey for sure. And thank you for that advice, Miss Shannon. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
I'm sorry.
Can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
A book that influenced me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I love Neil Donald Walsh. He's one that kind of inspired me. It's called Conversations with God, and it's just a very different way of looking at things. But he also wrote a children's book called The Little Soul in the Sun, and that really inspired me, because it took this, again, really big book and heavy topics, and it made it into children's, and that's what I used to give people. So that really inspired me to just simplify things, so then we can all understand it.
Thank you for that recommended book, Miss Shannon. And what is a simple monster check ritual adults can do at the end of the day to ensure peaceful night sleep and brighter morning?
Mhm. I love ending my day with meditation. I always try to clear my mind of everything. I really try not to look at my phone, and I put headphones and peaceful music. And so I really try to send myself off to sleep in a peaceful way. And then I find that that helps me carry on throughout my night. So I'm really aware of my surroundings and what I put in my mind before I go to bed.
Interesting, Miss Shannon. And what does a victory over monster look like? It is a monster of disappearing or simply learning to live with the lights on.
Yeah, I don't think they necessarily disappear in the way of, I acknowledge they're there, but what it is I acknowledge them as teachers, of thanking them for showing me that I can stand up in my power. And so I just look at it as acknowledgement that you're there, but it's not something I'm going to give power to. And so that's the way I kind of look at it, of just, again, it's a part of my story, but it doesn't own space in my emotions of it, I've turned that pain into gratitude now. And so that's where it kind of just disappears in that way.
Miss Shannon, how would you say to someone who believe this is just about positive thinking and their monster are too real and too big for this approach?
Hmm. I would just say, to trust the process of it because I do truly feel like we create our reality in a sense of that. So if we give that a lot of power and a lot of energy and think it's too big, well, that's what's going to be. I truly believe we live in a yes universe, meaning whatever you put out there, you're going to get. So if you give that power and you think it's too big to overcome, then that's probably what you're going to have. And so, again, it just goes back to that ultimate knowing of the power. And you can overcome anything when you're willing to just have, again, the forgiveness and look from the perspective of love.
Yes, forgiveness plus love is something else. What is the most powerful stories you have heard from a reader who applied your methods that's truly banish their monster?
Yeah, I would say I had some clients that came past this past weekend to retreat and just reading their stories back to me of how their lives changed in letting go of their monsters and overcoming that. But they all did it through love. And it wasn't this just awful suffering thing. And they were able to walk through it. But that's really just seeing when people really embrace who they are and know they bring it back to their pure, innocent self and seeing the transformation that it makes in their life and how it changes their perspective of everyone around them.
Miss Shannon, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, my other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, law 101, and mental health 101, love letters in third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Shannon, if you could leave the audience with or viewers with one fundamental truth about facing their fears, what would it be?
Yeah, I would just say again to trust, be willing to let go and surrender, and just trust the process that something beautiful can come out of your pain, and learning to turn that pain into passion, and turning all that hurt into healing, and then also turning all your lessons into love, and just be willing to do that and look at it and with an open heart, and good things are going to come.
Yes, people, it happened for a reason, as they said. Miss Shannon Curtis, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book, your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Mhm. Yeah, they can find me on my website at www.angelgoddesshealing.com.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Shannon Curtis because if you support her, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy to come, more and more empowering books as well to come, and for sure, more and more empowering business to come. So, Miss Shannon, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
More to come, people. See you soon.